This week was quite eventful because of multiple events that took across the globe, and mainly because UNGA meetings have been going on, and there have been quite a few statements that have been made by the world leaders. The first, and we talked about it in the last class, that at SCO in the meeting with President Putin, Indian Prime Minister said that now this is not the time for war, or this is not the era of war. That has been picked quite jealously by the West and Western media, and they are looking at this as a shift in India's stance. But you see, India's stance with respect to Ukraine crisis, this has been continuously evolving, and about that we shall be reading in today's class. Apart from that, Mexican president, he has talked about mediation between Russia and Ukraine, and he said that India can play a key role, and this shows increasing geopolitical profile of India. French president, he said that this is not the time for anti-West stance, and rather than that, both West and East, both developed and developing world, both of them should go for a joint compact for global development. India had a meeting with Turkey, Indian foreign minister with Turkish foreign minister, and on the sidelines of SCO, there were also some meetings. And when we look at the recent statement of Turkish president at the UNGA, his statement was mellowed down. He did not invoke UN Charter, and he did not bash India. Apart, rather than that, he said that we do expect that there should be a peaceful solution to the dispute. So if we look at his previous statements in 2019, 20, or even 2021, this one was comparatively mellowed down. And this is being linked with the meetings between Indian Prime Minister and Turkish President. And also India has sent a message to Turkey that if you raise Kashmir issue at the global fora, we are going to raise the Cyprus issue. You see, Turkey and Cyprus, they have a dispute because half a part of Cyprus has been taken over by Turkey. And there is a specific UN resolution with regard to that. So if Turkey tries to take the side of Pakistan and bring in Kashmir issue, India will always pinch by raising up Cyprus and relevant UN Charter resolutions. Okay. Then US President Joe Biden, he said that US is going to defend Taiwan, and in response to that, in explanation of that, when US foreign, this was asked from US State Department, they said that President was answering to a hypothetical question. China also started raising protest against it, that this goes against one China policy of USA, and this goes against sovereignty of China. With regards to Prime Minister's statement on with Mr. President Putin, Russia has said that Indian statement is consistent and it is in line with what Russia's interests are. So you see, India is trying to balance its stance and Russia is trying to accommodate it rather than going explicitly against India. Why? Because in present scenario, Russia needs India. Okay. So those were a few statements made, a few of the happenings. Apart from that, there was Iranian protest that is going on, and more than 36 people have been killed. They have died. About that, we shall be looking into it. And you see, last week there were no questions, but I was expecting that you people will be writing answers of the questions that were asked in the examination, UPSC main examination, those 4 questions. And if you want to write those questions and get them evaluated, please write them and send that to our Telegram channel, that is @IR this week, all small. And not just mains question. Every week I give 2 questions for practice, and the next week in the very beginning of the class I discuss those questions. If you wish, and I would ask you to write the answer to those questions and upload the PDF on the Telegram group and get that evaluated, because this will lead to a continuous practice of writing questions. We can see how dynamic questions have been asked in this year UPSC mains, and 3 out of those 4 questions were directly from the notes. And students have also said about that, कि sir, your notes, they were very direct and they had enough content to write the answers of those. And one regarding this geopolitics of climate change, they also accepted that, sir, this needed certain level of creativity on our side. And same happened with respect to the security notes. There were just 2 classes. I had not taken cyber security. Apart from cyber security, all those 3 questions, particularly with regards to organized crime, they were in the notes and they were in the mains examination. You can ask for any student who has attended target mains at Level Up IAS, and they can vouch for whatever I am saying. Okay. So what I am saying here is that you can write down the practice questions, upload on the Telegram group and get that evaluated. Because this exam is all about continuous practice. Since January or February, you will get involved with your prelims. So prior to that, please improve your answer writing. And yesterday I had taken a YouTube live regarding how to write mains answers, mainly GS 1 to 3. You can go to the Level Up YouTube channel and you can find that video. You can go through that video. Most of your answers regarding mains writing will be addressed in that video. In case you have got any more doubts, you can comment below that video, that will be answered, or you can bring that query to this Telegram group. Here also your queries will be addressed. Okay. So let us first look at some of the important events this week, then some other topics that we discuss in detail, and then the practice questions that you can write down and you can upload, and it has to be a PDF to be uploaded on the Telegram group, and you can get that evaluated. Okay. So let us look at today's class. The very first news is from Norway. Norway has got this huge oil and gas resources, and Norway has one of the biggest sovereign wealth funds worth $1.2 trillion, and this fund has been invested in more than 9,000 companies across the globe. 9,000 companies, just think about it. More than 1% of overall stock exchange globally is managed by this fund. And this fund has said that we are going to invest in those companies who are going to commit to a net zero emission by 2050. And they have also asked to all those companies where they are invested that by 2050 you have to achieve this net zero. So you see, this is a very significant step in the direction of climate change. Because imagine if 9,000 companies, they are committing to net zero emission naturally, which will mean that globally it will global emission will naturally come down. And when these 9,000 companies will be cutting down on their carbon footprints, naturally their competitors, they will also have to cut down on their carbon footprints, because the world is about competition. Tomorrow these companies, they will be selling, their USP will be that we are carbon neutral companies. Their rivals cannot boast of the same. So ultimately their rival will also have to come to the same strategy, and this will lead to a decline in overall carbon footprint of the private sector. So you can put this as an example of how private sector can play a key role in tackling climate change, how governments, how wealth funds, how fund managers, they can play a key role in climate change. Okay, so that is why this concept of green bonds. Then another point you can bring in the concept of green bonds, that companies, the wealth funds, the banks, they will be more focused on those companies which have very minimal carbon footprints or zero carbon footprint. Those are green bonds, or those who are invested in alternate energy, overall zero carbon footprint. So this you can put as an example of how nations, wealth funds, fund managers, private sector, they can play a key role in tackling climate change. Put this as an example. Okay, so even in case of GS3, if a question is there, what are the strategies that can be adopted for climate change? One point can be private sector / fund managers, they can ask the companies where they are invested to commit to a net zero by a specific date. For example, Norway Sovereign Wealth Fund. Okay, I hope this must be clear, that what is the importance of this point and how you can use this in your answer. Okay, so let us look at our best friend, that is China. China to enter into severe aging by 2035. It is expected that 20% of China will be old, and this percentage will be roughly 18.9% or 19%. Yeah, that is 20%, right? Okay, the population would be roughly around 40 crore. And mind you, this news is not of any UN agency, this news is from China. A government organization of China itself has said that. And you can link this with the overall aggressive nature of China, because you know that by 2035, when you have 20% of population that is old, naturally a segment of population will be child. So when you talk about this dependency ratio of the economy, that will increase. When dependency ratio increases, naturally overall consumption would increase, but productivity will decline. Look at Japan. It is an aging society. Similar will happen with China. So naturally its target of becoming a global superpower, that will be under question, because apart from all technical expertise that you have, you do need manpower. Just look at Japan. Japan is among the most technologically advanced nations, but it does not have that manpower, so it cannot claim that global superpower status. So that is another reason why China is so much impatient, and it wants to take actions along all its fronts, be it Taiwan, be it South China Sea, along Indian borders, within this window by 2030 or 2035. This is the reason. Okay, some other data that just a sec, let me write it down, so that around 19% by 2035, that would be roughly around 40 crore. It is expected that it would be 30 crore by 2025. And compare that with India. Presently, India has roughly 8% of population that is old, and it is expected to go, and yeah, this is 2011 numbers, 2011 census. Okay, by 2021 it is expected to be 11%, and by 2031 it is expected to be roughly around 30%. So that is why it is being said that this is the window of opportunity for India, because SBI survey has also said that by 2041 to 2051 India will be at the top of its demographic dividend. Since then India's overall demographic profile will start declining substantially. So this is how demography is linked to prosperity. And here comes this term of middle income trap. You have developed enough to become a middle income nation, but before you become a developed nation, suddenly your population has started declining. Your population has started aging. Point is that population will remain, but the ratio of older people that will increase. As a result, the demographic dividend, the workforce that you were having, the productivity, overall economic productivity, naturally that is going to decline. So before you become rich, you become older. So as a result, you will remain a middle income nation. What happened? Just take an example of China. It developed significantly. There was a significant economic growth, even a double-digit economic growth, because at that time labor cost in China was cheap. Presently, as it is getting higher, and there is a lot of uncertainty related to China, the companies, they are scrambling for some other nations. They are going to Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, even India. So as China further ages, naturally overall productivity that is going to decline because of lack of availability of labor force. Since population has become old, because we know that life expectancy that is continuously increasing. So as the population gets older, as a result, the cost of living will increase, but productivity has not increased. So more investment will be needed in issues like geriatric care, rather than some of the productive sectors of the economy. You can say housing, you can say roads, you can say manufacturing, industry, etc., etc. So that becomes the threat, and that threat is very much clear for India, because when you look at some of our states like Kerala, it has got population of elderly that is more than 14 to 15%. So South has already started aging. We are talking about 14%, and China is above that point. China, we are talking about an aged China at a 20% of elderly population. Some of our nations like Kerala, some of our states like Kerala, they are already at around 40%, 14%. So this is how this can become another dimension of understanding China. Apart from how it thinks, its geopolitical viewpoint, its ambitions, another sector is its internal social structure that is quietly aging. China found a solution to this in ending one-child policy, but the citizens, they are not willing to go for more than one child. Because once you get that comfort that if you have only one child, you can have a more peaceful family, you can ensure that the child that gets better education, better standard of living, overall standard of living of the family also improves. So why would they willingly shift from one child to two child or three childs? There will only be a very small population that will shift to that. So that will remain a tension for China. Another factor, when you have only one child, naturally no family would want to send their children to the borders because they are the only child in the family. So that became a matter of concern for Chinese army. And yes, there are some rumors going around in the social media that Chinese President Xi Jinping, he had been house arrested, there has been a military coup, and general he will be taking over, while President Xi Jinping, he was at the SCO meeting. The CCP, Chinese Communist Party elders, they have removed him from the post of Central Military Commission's chairman, and now he is under house arrest. You know as much as I know, because there is no confirmed news. Another set of news was that more than 60% of flights from Beijing have been cancelled. These are only bits and pieces of information, but what are the underlying reasons behind it, that is not yet known. But yes, around 2015-2016, there was a concern with Xi Jinping that he was fearing a coup. So there were news that every day he was sleeping in some other room because he was fearful for the coup and for his own life. Recently, some of the very senior peoples of the party, two of them have been sentenced to death and two of them for life imprisonment with a remission of 2 years. So again, this has caused quite a churn within the CCP itself. Moreover, when we look at the Chinese economy, it is not in a very good shape. There are cases of bank failure, real estate failure, very high debt of the provinces, strict lockdowns under zero COVID policy. So there is quite a possibility that something like that may happen, but we cannot be sure of it. And moreover, another line of thinking can be, if this happens, this can be for good. Not necessarily, because suppose some military man comes and just to divert attention from within China, they try to go for some misadventures along the borders, that can be a bigger pain for us. So all we have to do is to keep looking at the developments rather than being overtly jealous. Let us just look at it, what is happening and how that can pan out. Because even in case Xi Jinping, he has been house arrested, first of all, chances are very little, because he was on a purge mission and he has almost removed all his detractors, all his challengers who were around him. And mind you, recently some very important events took place within China and where Chinese president was missing. There is a CCP meeting coming around. So let us see what was the reality, what is the reality and what will happen. We can just sit, we can just assess, because even Western media, they have not been able to confirm any of this news. It is all about speculation. Okay, so that was about China. Then this one is voting undergoing in the and this voting is currently going on in Donbas region, Zaporizhia region, whatever its correct pronunciation is, I am unable to pronounce it properly. There is a voting undergoing. After that, it will be decided whether these people, they want to join with Russia. I think I have got the map. Let's just look at the map. Yep. So you see, this is Ukraine, right? and this is Russia. These two regions, Donetsk and Luhansk, this is called as Donbas region, and roughly 30% of population here is speaks Russian. So naturally there is an inclination. Okay, this is Zaporizhia and this is Kherson. These are the four regions the voting is undergoing, and there is naturally an expectation that they would vote in favor of Russia. And ultimately, just like within Georgia, it was South Ossetia and Abkhazia. Go to 2008 history of Georgia crisis. There were two specific regions, South Ossetia and Abkhazia, that is along the Russian border. Russia declared them as independent nations and recognized them. So this is part of Russia's design of protecting its own territory by creating buffers along its borders. So you can see here also all the Central Asian nations, they act as that buffer, that by ensuring the security of the Central Asian nations, Russia can ensure its own security. On one side it is Belarus, and that is why when Scandinavian nations then went for it, Russia said that it is going to react very strongly, because then Russia's own security will be under threat because NATO weapons will be along its borders. So here also you can see that Russia is trying to create the same buffer, so that by ensuring the security of all these regions, Russia will be in a position to ensure its own security and territorial integrity. And yes, this is Kharkiv, which Ukraine has recaptured from. Okay, Arish, good morning. I saw the news just now. In case of any doubt, you can ask all those doubts. Okay, that is the purpose of this live. Otherwise, there could have been a very simple this recorded video and uploading it. Okay. So this is Kharkiv and Ukraine has recaptured it. And this has shown the weakness of Russia. First of all, Russian armaments, they are not of that superior quality, because Ukraine can beat them with the Western weapons first. Second is there are issues with Russian logistics lines. So that is why the person heading the logistics supply, he has been changed very recently, I think 2 days back. Because unless you supply material from the back side, how can the army fight at the front? So from some of the regions, Russian soldiers, they have stepped back just to strengthen their defenses. And initially Russian plan was to recognize them as separate nations. But there is a change in Russian strategy because of reason that if Ukraine has taken back this specific region, there is always a chance that Ukraine can go for another offensive across this front and capture more regions. And when that happened, there were too much, what should I say, criticism within Russia, because this has shown that Russian military is comparatively weaker and even it could lose from Ukrainian army. So as a solution, what Russia has said that we will recognize them as within the Russian territory, and once they are within the Russian territory, Russia will have the right to protect this territory by all means possible. And that is why Russia has almost warned Western nations. Brussels, headquarters of EU, UK and USA. Russia has said that we will go for all means possible. All means possible naturally includes nuclear weapons, and that is why Dr. Jaishankar, when he was addressing the UNSC, he said that this nuclear option that has caused a great anxiety, because once Russia starts losing, it is but expected that it will go for any option. And you can also consider that as saber rattling on the part of Russia. It is just trying to increase the cost. It is saying to the West that keep supporting Ukraine, but to your own detriment. USA, on the other hand, US Congress has approved a more than $2 billion worth of arms to Ukraine, taking it to more than $18 billion worth of just military supplies. And you see, the point is that USA cannot lose it. Reason being, if USA loses, that shows that USA power in the region is limited, and that will lead to Russian resurgence, that will lead to Chinese resurgence. And even other USA allies like Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, they will start doubting US's capacity. And yet again, Russia cannot lose, because once Russia loses, what will happen to Putin, no one knows. And then whether Russia will remain a nation or it will further disintegrate just like 1991, that also no one knows. So the situation is damned if you do and damned if you don't. So bringing this, and UN and all the Western nations, they have said that we do not recognize this sham referendum. Okay, so by acquiring this region within Russia, at least Russia will have something to show to the people. Another factor, you are looking at it, Strait of Kerch, and this is Crimea, right? Previously, it was linked with Russia only through this, and all this while this was linked with Ukraine. So Russian position here, and yes, Crimea is where Russian, I think it's Crimea is where Russian Black Sea Fleet is there. Russia is one of the two warm water ports. And if Crimea goes off out of control of Russia, if it loses this naval base of Sevastopol, USA's presence in the Black Sea will be threatened. And from Black Sea only it is able to support Syria. It is able to ensure its dominance in the Mediterranean region. So this is another part of Russian strategy to protect its overall dominance in the region. And for prelims, please remember all these places. Arrange these places within Ukraine from north to south, from east to west. This is Strait of Kerch. This is Sea of Azov. And this is Black Sea. So which two water bodies are connected by Strait of Kerch? The answer would be Sea of Azov and Black Sea. So please remember this, not only from the point of mains but also from the point of prelims. Okay, so that is what Russian design is, that once they get merged with Russia, Russia can claim that we can ensure its protection by any means possible. So naturally Ukrainian option will also get limited. Moreover, President Putin has mobilized more than 3 lakh regulars. Sorry, not regulars, but those who have past military experience. That has caused quite a commotion within Russia, and that also shows that Russia has suffered significant human loss, and that is why it is having to mobilize its irregulars. And some sources are saying that the mobilization could be up to 1 million, 10 lakh people. And another dimension that we are generally missing is that winter is coming. And it was this winter that prevented Hitler from capturing Russia. Winter had played the key role. And yet again, winter will be there. Russia has an experience of that fighting, Ukraine does not have it. So let us see how all this evolves. So this is the next is anti-hijab protest in Iran. This is a very significant event, okay? More than 36 people died. What is the reason for this? It was the death of a Kurdish woman. And just imagine at the situation. It is not that she was not wearing hijab. She was wearing it, but they said that your hijab is loose. She was arrested. After 3 days, she was found dead. Police claimed, this morality police within Iran, they claimed that she died of heart attack. So imagine a woman in her early 20s dying out of heart attack. And that has resulted in quite a protest. And this is the biggest protest since 2019. And in that, this time 1,500 people had died. And this 2019, this was because of inflation, rise in fuel prices, to almost 3 times. The women, they are burning their hijab, they are cutting down their hair in the public. And Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, he is a hardliner, and he has said that we are going to curb these protests, these violent actions. And compare that with the situation within India. At one place, women are talking about their freedom of choice, their freedom from hijab. And in India, we are bringing that hijab as a part of freedom of choice. And you see, this is my personal opinion. If Supreme Court says that, okay, hijab is part of essential dress or essential practice, whatever you say, tomorrow what will happen? Morality of every Muslim child, girl child, that will be tested on the basis of hijab. That girl is putting on hijab, she is of good moral character. You are not putting it, you are not of good moral character. Naturally, there will be a societal pressure, there will be a family pressure on that girl, and she will be forced to put that on. And this is something we simply don't realize. And moreover, any school that is, I mean, school has got to have an uniform. And all the arguments that are being made in the court, you will just go through all those arguments, and those arguments are related to public places, public sphere. We are not France. There is no restriction on putting any sort of dress in France. I mean, there is no restriction on putting any sort of dress in India, whether you put on hijab, whether you don't put on hijab. But it is a school premise. And the judges, they ask the very right question, that what if someone comes tomorrow with in a bare body, just a dhoti? Because we know that in many of the Hindu households during puja, such dresses are there. Just a dhoti, at the most one angvastram at the top. And if students say that, okay, I will also put on a dhoti and a angvastram, and that dhoti will be of color of school uniform, will you permit that? And where will this go? Very simple is that a rule is a rule, and a rule cannot be bent just for one student. And if you start bending it for one student, then you will have to bend it for everyone, every now and then. And what will that lead to? We can realize that very well. And moreover, when you link about this to the right to education, first of all, if we go for that constitutionally, right to education is up to the age of 14, not in the college. And even if you talk about college, and if you think that, okay, that college is not permitting to put on my preferred choice of dress, change your college. Why do you want that one student or two students should change this whole rule of the college? Tomorrow you will say that this uniform, this is something I do not prefer, this goes against my own thinking, and tomorrow you will say that no uniform, all we want is some funky or some other dress. So please look at this. There can be a question regarding feminism, women rights, that in India the debate around women rights is vertically opposite or diagonally opposite from the concerns across the globe, and there this hijab can be a very important aspect. You can bring in this as an example, that in Iran there are anti-hijab protests, and in India we are fighting for a hijab, and that too within college premises. Okay, so try to link events like this. It is not just about being political, that okay, if I put this hijab angle, this will become political. No. It depends on how you put your argument. When you put your argument with women freedom, with social morality, children being judged, then it is a very rational, it is a very legal, it is a very ethical argument. Okay. So now let us go to another one. Quad countries, they have signed HADR agreement, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. And apart from that, there are some other initiatives in the pipeline. One is maritime domain awareness. About that, the nations, they had agreed at the Tokyo summit. Then there is STEM research, STEM, science, technology, engineering and mathematics, STEM. Then it is also about economic dimension. You must be remembering about IPEF, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. So bring in all these points as part of supporting Quad. Why do you see Quad as a dynamic organization? What are the positives of Quad? Or how Quad has evolved, how Quad has grown in profile? So naturally, disaster management and disaster assistance is a very important significant of the Indo-Pacific region. Why? Because of frequent volcanic eruption, frequent cyclones, tsunami, Okay, so that there you can bring in this point about HADR agreement. India's trilateral meeting on the sidelines of UNGA meetings, we will be looking at it in greater detail. There have been many trilaterals with UAE and France, then it was with Italy and what was that another nation? India, Japan and Italy. Sir, your argument is rational, but religion made it worse. Yeah, Shivanya, you see, bad or worse, you see, at the end of the day, we are all thinking, we are all rational individuals. And even all those children who have put their petitions, you will naturally find that it is not their own rational choice. But it is because of some, I don't know whether ideological motivation, whether political motivation, what motivation it was, that we are not aware of. Moreover, you just look at me or just look at yourself. Suppose had there been a restriction put on me that you cannot put on this shirt, you have to put on a dhoti and an angvastram, something like that, something that we put generally during the puja. Would we have liked it? We like it because that is occasional, that has not been made mandatory. Or even for girls, suppose something like ghungat made compulsory, covering your head, that is made compulsory. Still in villages, women go for that choice because that has been part of their habit, part of their life, part of their society. In cities, you do not find that. My point is that this yearning for freedom that has been part of human history, evolution of society, evolution of culture. So yes, religion making it worse, what should I say about it? You see, generally we tend to mistake religion, or you see, again the point is that that is not related to the culture or the values I follow. So I might not be in a right position to make a comment on the values associated with hijab. I can only talk about it from my own personal perspective and from my general understanding of the issue. But yes, what I understand as religion is, it is just about your personal connect with that supernatural authority. And that connect you can find just by sitting and meditating. You can find by sitting in a temple. You can find that by looking at a deity. You can find just by reading some scriptures. You can just find by looking at the sky, water, river, anything. So for me, that it is. And that is why there are no restrictions. And that is the beauty. Just look at it. What we know about it. You believe in God, okay. You do not believe in God, okay. Whether God and Purush and Prakriti are one, okay. They are two, okay. There are special considerations, okay. You do not believe in karma, okay. You believe in, you are fatalist, okay. You are completely materialist, okay. That is the beauty. And that is why I say ki people should understand what it is. Okay, I'm not getting into religion and why hijab and all, because that is simply not my remit. I have not read that and I'm not in a position to make a comment on that. Okay, so let us now go to the next area. USA has given additional $2.8 billion of military assistance to Ukraine and its neighbors. I gave a reference with respect to Russia and we shall be further discussing about it in the. So these were some of the very important news. And yes, regarding Dr. Jaisankar's address to the UNGA, I have not gone through it in detail. I will go through it and the important points I will be putting in the next class. However, there won't be much to say because most of it would be about Indian economy, our growth rate, our targets regarding climate change, our targets regarding improving the lives of our own citizens. But if there is any very important geopolitical message, if it is there, I shall be bringing it in the next class. Okay. This is an important piece of news. Religion need timely reform in today's era. Absolutely correct. And not just religion, everything needs reform. You see our constitution, 104 constitutional amendments. That is a reform, right? In our society, reform even within ourselves. What our thinking was when we were 10 years old, then 20 years old, then 30 years old. We are evolving, we are reforming ourselves, not just religion, every aspect of us. Because we must remember that only constant in this life is death, and only thing permanent is change. Life and death, change and permanence. Okay, that's enough of philosophy. You see, in case of Nepal, if you remember that during 2015 the constitution was promulgated, and after that blockade started. India was not very happy. Rather than accepting, India had taken note. The purpose was the same, citizenship. Because Nepalese women married to Indian men, they were considered unequal. They were not given citizenship by descendants, but Indian women married to Nepalese men, they were being given that citizenship. And I am specifically mention India because this beti roti ka nata. Because in Nepal, in this Tarai region, they have got people from Tarai region, they have got this very deep familial connection with people from Nepal, people from Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. And the purpose behind that change of demography, that change of citizenship law, was because there was always a fear within Nepal that Nepal might get overwhelmed with Indian population. Though we belong to same geographical, same cultural sphere, but any smaller nation, it will have concerns regarding its bigger neighbor. So that is why that law was brought, where women, those women, Indian women marrying Nepalese men, they were not put at equal pedestal with Nepalese women marrying Indian men. As a result, there were protests. India had also said, and since then there have been attempts to reform that citizenship law. And in presently Nepal government, Madhesi parties, they are part of the government, and this has been part of their demand that those women should also be given citizenship immediately. And that has become a bone of contention, because opposition parties, they are saying that there should be certain cooling off period, 7 years, just like the provision within India. Another thing is that they are trying to attract investment. That is why they are saying that non-SARC NRI foreigners, they will be getting citizenship rights, but without vote, so as to attract investment. And then again there is also another provision with respect to those children whose mothers are Nepalese but their fathers are not known. With them, it has been said that they will have to declare, the mothers will have to declare that their father is not known. Then they will be given citizenship. But a similar provision with respect to Nepalese father of those children whose mothers are not known, that is not, the same provision is not for them. हिंदी में बता देता हूं कि ऐसे बच्चे जो नेपाल में हैं, क्योंकि जब नेपाल का कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन आया था उसमें कहा गया था कि जितने भी बच्चे अभी नेपाल में हैं उन सारे के पास नेपाल की सिटीजनशिप है, सो ऐसी माँ जिसका कि बच्चा नेपाल में है लेकिन उसके फादर के बारे में पता नहीं है, तो ये कहा गया कि उसकी माँ को ये बताना पड़ेगा कि फादर इज नॉट नोन, ओनली देन दैट चाइल्ड कैन गेट अ सिटीजनशिप। लेकिन अगर कोई ऐसा फादर है जिसका कि बच्चा है नेपाल में लेकिन उसकी मां के बारे में पता नहीं है, तो उस बच्चे को मिल जाएगी सिटीजनशिप, बट दिस डिक्लेरेशन की जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी उस फादर को। So that is why you can see clearly that this is discriminatory. So एक तो है कि विमेन किसी भी जो कि नेपाल में शादी की उसको इमीडिएट सिटीजनशिप देना, that has become a bone of contention, and this gender based inequality, that if a father does not have to make a declaration, why a mother should be forced to make a declaration? Okay. उसके आगे क्या हुआ? There were constitutional amendments made to the constitution and it was sent to the president. President sent back to the Pratinidhi Sabha, the Lok Sabha, the lower house of Nepalese parliament, with a set of questions. The parliament, without any amendment, sent back the bill again to the president. And as per the provision of Nepalese constitution, it had to be signed within 15 days. Nepalese president, he consulted a set of experts, constitutional experts, lawyers, people from civil society, and then she did not sign. And that window of signing for Nepalese president is of 15 days. And 48 hours before this 15-day deadline, Nepalese parliament got dissolved for the next elections. So that is the constitutional crisis. Generally what happens, because even in Nepal, president is just a titular head. If president has got any objections, she is not the authority to take a decision. Ultimately the matter would go to the courts and courts would take decision over the constitutionality of the legislation. But these are some of the concerns of the developing nations, of the third world nations. And as a result, presently there is a constitutional crisis within Nepal. There have been demands for impeachment of the president, and Nepalese president has acted partisan. She is pro KP Sharma Oli, but not that much in favor of Sher Bahadur Deuba. Moreover, the Chief Justice of Nepal, he is also apparently under house arrest because against him an impeachment motion had been moved. The motion could not be passed. The parliament has been dissolved. As a result, the Chief Justice is saying that let me come out and let me undertake my constitutional obligations, constitutional responsibilities. So this is the issue within Nepal, and naturally all of that will have and can have an spillover impact on India, because any domestic instability within Nepal will naturally have a spillover effect on India because of these open borders. There are familial ties across the borders. There will be pressure from the political parties, from the civil society, mainly in the northern Uttar Pradesh and northern Bihar, that you put pressure on Nepal. And if we go for putting pressure on Nepal, there will always be a fear that Nepal will, as usual, go closer to China. Moreover, Nepal has signed this BRI agreement, and recently there have been more meetings. The head of Chinese, what should I say, Chinese assembly, what is that called as, just like our Lok Sabha, he had made a visit and they had reaffirmed commitment for Belt and Road Initiative. So this is how it becomes quite a tough task. Because if you are going for looking into your own interests within India, your political interest, your foreign relations will suffer. And if you look at your diplomatic relations, your foreign relations, ultimately your inner calculations might suffer, something that we had seen in case of Sri Lanka in the past during UPA regime, and something like that might happen. There is no surety, because and chances are comparatively lesser, because presently the Madhesi parties, they are with the ruling party, a part of communist, and also the Congress, Nepalese Congress, they are all in the alliance, and there is an agreement over this. Okay, so I think that it is, I don't think there is, yes, these are some of the data that this has affected around 500,000 stateless people, because unless you declare that this is the new citizenship law, since then whoever child has taken birth in Nepal, he has not been given citizenship because of all the disputes around all these provisions. So naturally they will get citizenship, they will get voting rights. So this decision has affected 500,000 children within Nepal. Granting citizen immediately to foreign women married to Nepalese citizens, already discussed. Non-voting citizenship documents, the purpose is for investment. Nepalese mother and unidentified, they will have, if mother will have to declare so, this has been termed as discriminatory. And this is being said that by the opposition that it should not be immediate, just like India, there should be a 7-year window. So that is what is mentioned, gender-based discrimination, and opposition wants a cooling off period. Okay. So now let us go to the next one. Yes, this is important, and I am expecting a question in PSIR on this topic either this year or next year. Question can be directly related to minilaterals or small groupings. Small groupings has become a new phenomena in Indian diplomatic approach, Indian diplomatic discourse. I am expecting a question, and since we saw that UPSC does expect the GS students to be more specific to international relations, like geopolitics of climate change. So that is why I have put this question, put this topic. You see, recently on the sidelines of UNGA, we had two important meetings. Okay, the first one was between India, UAE and France, and the next one was between India, Japan and Italy. And even Italy, which is part of, which is around the Mediterranean Sea, Italy has also agreed to stability in the Indo-Pacific region. So most of these groupings that you are seeing, they are part of either stabilizing Indo-Pacific, protecting India's own interests, or a shift or an attempt to balance the undergoing shift of power, because we know that USA is weakening, China is strengthening itself, USA is retreating itself from some very important regions like the Gulf, and that is why USA wants that India should take that space, and that is why this I2U2. There was a question, and that question was almost discussed in the class, almost the same question, and naturally that was part of notes. I have already showed that to you in the previous week, this Sunday discussion. So first trilateral bit with France and UAE, and all three are strategic partners of each other. Now let us just look at this game of trilaterals and why it is so much important. You see, in case of foreign relations, there are meetings like bilateral Two nations, unilateral, one nation, and there it would be multilateral, means more than one, sorry, more than two. And here it will be tri or it can be quadri. Okay. So this is how nations engage with each other, and this is how it is termed. And you see, what has happened is that the world has seen a significant shift. It is accepted that USA's power is declining and China's power is rising. And apart from USA's decline, USA decline, China's there is rise, and the middle powers they are asserting themselves. One is about assertion, another is about hedging their options. Because you see, suppose we talk about Indo-Pacific, we have seen in the past, and USA is continuously trying to arrive at some sort of modus vivendi with China. So suppose US comes at some sort of modus vivendi with China, then, and we know that USA is among the major practitioners of realpolitik. It just looks after its own national interest. So then what will happen to all these comparatively smaller powers like Japan, India, Australia, South Korea, there is Vietnam, then there is Saudi and Iran, UAE, Israel. Because since the end of Cold War, the relationship was woven around. During the Cold War, it was USA versus USSR. Post Cold War, USSR that got weakened, it became Russia. So all these alliance systems that were linked to USA. As China's rise became significant and China became a major challenger to the USA, USA attempted to look inwards to prop up its own economy. So that is why we saw USA turning protectionist. And it's not just about protectionist, it is also ready to reduce its overall global responsibilities. And that will lead to a lot of uncertainties. And that is why mainly this has emerged, this era of minilaterals. Because there are small group of nations with common interest, they are converging and they are taking care of each other's interests, they are taking care of mutual interests. That is one aspect. Another aspect is that there are agenda specific groupings as well. It's not, and this agenda specific is also part of geopolitics only. Anything that happens will be part of geopolitics. You talk about something like SCRI, Supply Chain Resilience Initiative between India, Japan and Australia. One part of it is balancing China, better coordination in the Indo-Pacific. But apart from that, it is also about diversification of supply chains so that these nations can mutually be more dependent on each other and reduce their dependence from China. So that is the And moreover, we see that we have got a diverse set of interests. There is SCO, then there is Quad. So that is why this is an era of minilaterals, and all these are factors. And this will help India in balancing its geopolitical interest by being part of various groupings. I have said this in the past, I am saying this again, and I will say it the next time as well, that if you are not on the table, you are on the menu. So rather than being on the menu, and India is too large to be on the menu, so India is on the table as the member of all these groupings. And all these nations, we will see that there is concern. Look at France and UAE. France is a nation that does not toe USA's line. And recently after AUKUS, the relationship has not remained same. On Russia also, initially France had a different stance. UAE, it also knows that it needs to diversify its relationship because of markets, because of investment and opportunities. Because ultimately USA, though USA's fifth fleet that is in Qatar, but still USA's focus is shifting slowly, and that is why UAE became part of I2U2. USA's profile is decreasing and India's profile is increasing. India's economy is booming. India and UAE roughly complementary economies. So that is why I2U2, and put Iran into that mix. Naturally, Iran is a technology leader, and as Iran and UAE relationship normalizes, that will normalize relationship between Israel and this Saudi Arabia. So presenting a front against Iranian adventurism. So this is all part of that geopolitics. Just let us look at it. Quad, around Indo-Pacific, balancing China, but it has expanded its profile. We saw regarding vaccination. Then HADR, recently signed, IPEF, okay, SCRA, supply chain, sorry, not SCRA, SCRI, supply chain resilience initiative. We already gave a reference. Diversification of supply chains, yet again stability in the region, yet again balancing China, India, Japan and Australia with common geopolitical interests coming together for a deeper cooperation among each other. And you can bring in the point that now India and Australia have a FTA. India and Japan have a FTA. Okay. So this will lead to deeper economic cooperation, economic complementarities between India and Australia because of natural resources that Australia has, and India is a predictable market unlike China. Okay. Then India, Australia, Indonesia, this is another trilateral. India, Italy, Japan, and this meeting took place recently, I think 22nd, on the sidelines of UNGA. And there are some other suggestions, something like India, Japan, Vietnam. Why? Because Vietnam is equally concerned about China. And all these three nations, they have either territorial or maritime dispute. Both Japan and Vietnam, they have got maritime disputes with China. Then another is about India, Japan and Russia. Prior to this Ukraine crisis, till 2021, India and Japan, they were trying to engage with Russia, because Russia needs funds for development of its forest. India and Japan can cooperate on that. and Russia cannot trust China with respect to its Far East, because there in 1969 along the same region there was a territorial dispute and there was also conflict that led to division between the communist bloc, and that led to 1972 famous Nixon visit and all. Okay. So, and all these minilaterals you can link it with India-Japan relations, because you can see Japan is a recurring thing. You can look at here Japan is there, here Japan is there, then in Quad Japan is there, supply chain resilience initiative Japan is there. Okay. And what is the purpose? Main purpose is stability in the Indo-Pacific, hedging against global uncertainties. Already discussed. India's expanding and diversified interests. Multipolarity, and yes, students generally ask this, what is the difference between multilateralism and multipolarity? You see, multilateralism is related to diplomacy and multipolarity is related to strategic interest. How the power in the globe is balanced. When there were two dominant powers, USA and USSR, it was bipolar, then only USA it was unipolar. Now we are talking about multipolar, because if the world becomes multipolar, we do not have that great military capability, that great economic capabilities. But if power is with a greater set of nations, naturally our maneuvering space will get increased and we will have a greater negotiating capacity. Okay. So that is why multipolarity. There are goal specific groupings you can mention about SCRI, Supply Chain Resilience Initiative, and another factor is that it is easy to converge and coordinate. There are smaller group of nations, 3 or 4 nations, they have got common interest. So in that grouping it becomes much easier to coordinate rather than having a grouping of 10 or 12 or 15 nations. Then it becomes much difficult. Another factor is that if we go for previous groupings, generally that grouping was geography specific. Even if you talk about USMCA, which was earlier NAFTA, or African Union or European Union, SAARC, ASEAN, SCO, all these groupings are geography specific. From specific region, either from Africa, North America, Southeast Asia, South Asia, Central and Eastern Asia, Europe. So these groupings previously they were geography specific and their domain was limited. Either it was economic or it was strategic. Now the domain has got diversified and geographical reach has also diversified. Just imagine France and UAE, West Europe, India is in South Asia. So now geography is no more a constraint with regards to all these groupings. So please understand, because this is a new phenomenon in geopolitics, might not be of that much interest to GS students, but this is very important for PSIR students for your IR. It can be in paper 2 part A or paper 2 part B. I am expecting such a question, either directly or indirectly. Let us see. Today is the paper. Let us see it. Okay. And this goes beyond the limitation of geography. That is what I explained right now. Okay. Any questions? Okay, Shivanya, your message has been retracted. I think that was a wise decision, because unnecessarily why to bring in all those controversies to your doorstep. Okay. Then this is about UNSC reforms and what USA has said. US President Joe Biden, he has said that he supports permanent membership but for 3 nations: Japan, Germany and India. In the G4 there is another nation and that nation is Brazil. But perhaps because of the Bolsonaro dispensation within Brazil, which has got very good relations with Republican Party and particularly Donald Trump, but not that great relationship with the Democrat Party. So internal politics does play a bigger role. You can see it from here. Okay. And he has said something very important that you can mention with respect to UNSC in the concluding lines of your answer. What he has said, just look at it. He has said that UNSC members should uphold and defend UN Charter and refrain from using veto except in rare and extraordinary situations. So you can always conclude that reform of UNSC is the need of the hour, but for the time being, as said by the US President, the use of veto should be responsibility and must be done only in extraordinary situation. And you see, USA will remember all these principles now, not then. Why? Because USA knows that it won't be going for misadventurism till it went even up to 2011. And so that is why it talks about a responsibly using veto powers. We have seen in case of China, it has yet again blocked naming sanctioning of a terrorist just in the name of technical hold. So this was a comment both on Russia, because Russia and China both have been using their veto in case of Ukraine. No. Russia is using in case of Ukraine. Russia and China both are using in case of Syria. So that is why he has made this comment, and you can use this comment as the concluding line of any question related to UNSC reform. Okay. He has supported Germany, Japan and India as permanent members of UNSC. And this yet again, even this support creates challenge for us, because we want G4 as the members of reformed UNSC with veto powers, and that G4 includes Brazil. But if suppose USA says that no, we are not in favor of Brazil, then naturally that will be a spanner in the plan of G4. And it may be the case that Biden or USA in principle might agree with membership of Brazil, because Brazil has traditionally been more closer to USA, except for the present regime, and it was also very close during Trump regime, the Bolsonaro regime in Brazil. But here it may so happen that just for the consumption of domestic audience, Joe Biden has said so, because in Brazil also elections are due. So any such statement in the favor of Brazil perhaps could have influenced Brazilian people in favor of Bolsonaro, and Democrat Party within USA, it does not consider Jair Bolsonaro in great regards. That can be one factor. One can be that it is mainly because of the type of regime in Brazil. Unless otherwise, generally USA Brazil, they have traditionally been good relations. Okay. So here are some of the what are the challenges to UNSC reforms. The first is that the process itself is complex. Last UNSC reform had taken place in 1965, and during that non-permanent members, they were increased from 6 to 10, and permanent they remained 5. And the way of change is that there should be 2/3 majority at UNGA. Okay, and this has to be supported by the permanent members of UNSC. Who has got a permanent membership? It is China. So do you think China will ever agree to India's permanent membership? Naturally, China will put a veto every time, putting a spanner into India's plans of getting a veto power. And it were us, when Taiwan had got this membership of the UNSC, India's stance at that point was that China deserves it and it should be China. So we simply forgot the Cautillian wisdom that your neighbor is a natural enemy and neighbor's neighbor is a natural ally or a natural friend. So we supported China, the communist China, getting a veto power, and today we see what a big headache it has been. So that is why I always say diplomacy runs on the basis of interests rather than on the basis of idealism. Okay, so that is one part. Another issue is that within P5 there is a lack of consensus. Yeah. Another issue is that coffee club or uniting for consensus. And these are nations, they say that rather than going for a 2/3 majority, we should try to get an unanimity, which is almost impossible. And this coffee club belongs to regional competitors of G4, which includes, against India it is Pakistan, against Brazil it is Argentina, then against Germany it is Italy. So these nations say that rather than going for, since it is a UNSC reform, rather than going for it, our focus should be mainly on this, going for a consensus. So these are all challenges. And even with respect to it, different nations, these nations, they have different stance. While France and UK, they support the reform. Why? Because their legitimacy as a member of P5 is under question. Neither you are militarily that strong, nor you are economically that strong. And a nation which is both militarily and economically stronger than you is sitting out of P5. West or Europe is overrepresented, 2 nations. Asia is underrepresented, only China is there. From Africa there is no nation. So that is why there was Azulvini consensus of African Union, and they claimed that we want 2 seats. And that is part of Annan plan, where he says that 6 new permanent members that we have, that I have mentioned in the notes. And we support that Azulvini consensus. Then in Latin America, there is no representation. Furthermore, Islamic world says that we also need a representation. Why? Because many of the actions that are being taken is in Islamic world. So these are all challenges to UNSC reforms in general and for India in particular. So when a question comes regarding India UNSC reforms, you can put in pros: commitment to UN Charter, most successful democratic example, its economic might, its population, its contribution to the UN peacekeeping forces. Okay, so that is why Dr. Jayasankar had said that you will have a scenario where a nation that presents 1/6 of the humanity will not be a part of UNSC. And moreover, the issue even with UNPKF is that the troop contributing nations like India, since they are not part of P5, they are not taken into, they are not communicated with, they are not engaged with regarding troop deployments. And if anything happens to any of the peacekeepers from India, ultimately it is the government of India who will have to answer to its citizens. So these are some of the areas of UN reforms that I don't think when we will discuss in this class, because remit of these classes are very limited. Okay. So let us go back to it. We have discussed about it. China's opposition, Coffee Club demand of uniting for consensus, other groupings about their inclusion, as I said, Islamic world and African Union, complex process and lack of consensus, already discussed. So let us go to the next page. And yes, regarding UNSC reform, please remember this. Kofi Annan, ex-UN Secretary General, he had given 2 plans. Okay. Presently, okay, first let us look at the plans. 6 new permanent members, which would be G4 plus 2 from Africa. Okay. And total it would increase from present 15 to 24. Even in the second one, the number of seats also increases to 24, but here there is a new set of groupings where it is saying that they will have, this will be 8 nations and 1 non-permanent member. Okay. So these nations, they will not have veto, but they will have a membership of 4 years and subject to renewal. Presently, the membership, the non-permanent membership of UNSC is for 2 years, and you cannot get elected consecutively. But here he says that they will have, there will be provision for continuous election, subject to there will be permission for re-election. So that will be almost a permanent representation, but without veto. Okay. So here veto, here not veto, and yet again there is a debate around veto power, whether this should be given, this should not be given, because the P5 nations, they have used for their personal geopolitical interests. Okay. And next comes Azulvini consensus. Africa has said that we want 2 membership, because anyway there are 54 nations. So they do, and moreover, most of the UN PKF deployments, they are around Africa. And India has agreed to this. India has agreed to Azulvini consensus. The G4 has agreed to it. Okay. So this was about. Now let us come to the status of Priyanka. Good morning, Ajinkya. It's really nice that you are continuously looking into it. And yes, Ajinkya, from today onwards, whatever practice questions are there, you can write it down and you can upload it on that Telegram group. That is, let me remind you, IR this week, and you can get that evaluated. And I was expecting that you people would be writing the 4 questions that were asked in the men's examination GS paper 2. You can also write that down and you can also upload that on the Telegram group. The answers will get evaluated, may not be immediately. So please do not get panicked कि sir मेरा check नहीं कर रहे हो, delay कर रहे हो, because naturally that will be contingent to the time availability. Okay. So you can write it down, upload it there, it will get evaluated, so that ultimately there is a practice about writing the answers. ठीक है. अब चलते हैं, देखते हैं क्या हो रहा है रशिया में. We have already discussed about this, that what has happened in this Kharkiv region. Ukraine has recaptured and it has held its ground. Russia had to step back to strengthen its defenses. In result, it has ordered a mobilization of 3 lakh troops, and expectation is that it might go up to 10 lakh or 1 million. And this has caused a lot of uncertainty, because this shows that Russia is not on that strong footing. It is very quickly losing main. But another aspect is that since Russia is going for that referendum, perhaps Russia will use all these people to protect that border, so that Russia can go for forward deployment of some of its key military assets, so that in case of any attack it can be repealed. Because once those nations they get included into Russia, naturally Russia is saying that then it will be my sovereign right to protect it. Okay. Then referendum in all these regions, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Luhansk and Kherson. I have already shown that to you on the map. And G7 has agreed to put a price cap, but what that cap is not agreed, and Russia has said that any nation that goes for it, they will have to pay a price. We have seen that how energy supplies through this Nord Stream 1 that has been reduced. And what Russia is trying to do is that Russia is trying to reorient its markets towards Asia. Previously it was looking towards Europe. Now it is looking towards Asia, because Asia is among the key fastest developing regions. Plus it does not have such geopolitical tensions with Asia. Okay. And with Europe, the problem of Europe's problem is that in the winters they need oil for heating of homes, and that is why someone like Hungary, it has not agreed. Hungary has said, Viktor Orban, and European Union is not a very big fan of Viktor Orban. He has said that it is causing greater harm to Europe than Russia, because in case of Russia the prices are high, so it is getting more money from the same resources. And because of the high energy prices, cost within inflation within Europe has shot up. We have seen that in case of USA, in case of UK and other European nations. So that has become a problematic issue, and since winters are coming, European nations, they are scrambling for their energy resources, because it is the time they store their energy resources, so that across the winter they can supply oil mainly for heating of homes. Okay, and within European Union there is no consensus. And this previous Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi, he has also given a statement against all these sanctions, and his statement is almost in support of Russia, and he is going to contest for the position of Prime Minister. So within Europe also there is lack of unanimity because it's very natural that nations will look at their own narrow national interests. Okay. Then comes position of different nations. We know about it. That and yes, China, look at, in case of USA, we know it. In case of India, we know that it has been evolving. Previously, it was that take care of security interests. Then we started talking about sovereignty and territorial integrity. At Busha killings, we talked for impartial inquiry, and that is yet again said by Dr. Jaishankar. He said that even in case of war, there should not be violation of human rights, and in case there is any such violation, there should be an independent probe, independent inquiry. And look at Chinese statement. Respect for their sovereignty and territorial integrity. This is less to do with Ukraine and more to do with China itself, because China considers Taiwan as part of its mainland, its own territory. So that is why China is talking about itself rather than talking about Ukraine. And then UN Charter should be observed, boilerplate. Legitimate security concerns of any country should be taken seriously. And this is what Russian position is, that our security concerns had been threatened because of Ukraine and its purported membership of the NATO. And China is also talking about itself, because arming of Taiwan, US defense sells to Taiwan, that China says that this goes against our own security interests. India's exercise with US along the borders in Uttarakhand, that says that it also goes against our security concerns, our security interests. So rather than looking at it from this has China has said about Ukraine, it is mostly about China itself and somehow protecting Russian concerns. Ukraine has said that yes, China is our key trade partner. We try to talk to China, but unfortunately we couldn't get much. Okay, so let us look at more. Peacefully resolving the crisis, parties to properly address differences through dialogue and consultation, but China itself would not. We know what it did at the Indian borders. So these are just generic statements, but even within those statements you can mention about China talking about legitimate security concerns, shows that it is more aligned with Russia rather than with Ukraine. Modi, today's era is not a war. This you know is very famous. So suppose a question comes that today's era is not a war. So how you are going to explain that? So again you'll have to take a war in conventional sense. Why? Because of the losses, threat to the human right, infrastructure, because in case of Ukraine it is being estimated the loss is more than 1 trillion birth. Then it is also about supply chains, they get disrupted, causing inflation and economic recession. But apart from that, there are other pressing challenges, something like climate change, global warming, global hunger, SDGs. Okay, all these things causing refugee crisis. This will give a greater scope to terrorists to launch some of the attacks. So this is how you are going to suppose, though there are chances are less, but I am just telling that if such a question comes, how you are going to diversify your points. Okay, it can even be a topic of essay. So you can also try to collect points from different aspects, that rather than war, focus on cooperation, and you can give example of between Germany and France, between USA and Japan, even within ASEAN nations, between Malaysia and Indonesia. Okay, Dr. Jayasankar, he has referred that future outlooks is even more disturbing because of this nuclear issue, because President Putin, he said so, and even the head of Russian National Security Council, he also gave the same indication regarding UK and USA. Okay. China-Russia relations, something of very much interest to us. Why? Because Russia is among the most dependable partners. Then more than 60% of our military platforms, they have got their origin from Russia. And moreover, India, China and Russia, we share a common geography in the Asia, and we have got membership of multiple platforms like BRICS and SCO. So if Russia aligns itself with China, naturally India will get marginalized. And there is a significant development in the interest with trade relations. It has crossed $150 billion. But at the same time, it has not increased to the pace it was expected to, because China does not want to sour its or deteriorate its relationship with its other energy partners. Because suppose you get dependent on only one nation, something like that European nations did on Russia. Tomorrow, if Russia closes its taps, let's just take a imaginary situation, hypothetical situation. Then again you will have to get back to all these suppliers, and then they will not consider you as a reliable market. So though economic relationship has expanded, but that underlying distrust that continues. And moreover, China is also being seen negatively because of its stance, because of this Ukraine crisis. And this has got created complications within China as well because of high energy prices. Chinese economic activity itself is declining. It has got very high levels of debt. Okay, so those are some of the points mentioned here. This is the joint statement, and just look at the joint statement. Almost they have got a similar position on most of the issues. Something like they should deepen strategic cooperation, and apart from all this, just focus on this, that during their meeting on the sidelines, they focused on deepening of strategic cooperation. They have also got joint military exercises. So deepening of strategic cooperation, who is a strategic rival of India, naturally India's interests will be compromised, right? Global governance, high quality practical cooperation, fairer international order, oppose unilateralism, all this is anti-USA. Okay, and then no limits partnership. Always remember this term in case of Russia and China, no limits partnership, but it has got its own limitations because of all those factors underlying distrust, and the relationship is based on external factors. Suppose USA as a shared enemy, shared threat, that, and suppose somehow USA mends its relationship with Russia, will the relationship continue to be equally strong? The answer is no. Or if USA mends its relationship with China, naturally the relationship will not remain equally strong. So rather than being internal, the relationship is based on external factors, the shared animosity. Okay, then bilateral trade has touched almost $146 billion, almost $150 billion. 50% since 2014 and 36% in 2021 alone. Okay, and these are some of the sales. You can see that raw materials from this Russia and finished goods from China, and there have been tensions because China had been poaching Russian technicians and Russian scientists, because there are many areas, particularly with respect to defense manufacturing engines. China has not been able to develop jet engines, and it wants that, and it has to rely on Russian engines. So those are still some area. Then in the Far East, Russia does not rely on China, because that was the region where the dispute was in 1969, and that is why rather than China, Russia wants Japan, Russia wants India to invest in those regions. Okay, Eastern Economic Forum, I have already discussed about it. And then Russia enjoys a trade surplus naturally, because the price of energy is increasing. Then let us look at the complementarities between Russia and China. USA has a common challenge, similar type of governments and relationship, both are communist governments, so that becomes also, because you see, when we talk with USA or with France, democracy as a shared value, we talk about it continuously. Similarly, both are communist nations. Economic complementarities, Russia produces raw material and China needs them. Then there is geographical distance is also not there. So naturally, supply of energy through pipeline is more cheaper and more reliable compared to any maritime based trade, because there you will have to, first of all, your logistics cost will increase, plus there are so many choke points. So any of your trade that can be under threat. Then there is an agreement to link Eurasian Economic Union with Belt and Road Initiative. Chinese worldview, China looks at itself as the sole power initially in the Asia, and then globally it wants to replace the USA, but Russia wants a multipolar world, and that is why Russia becomes important for India, because both want multipolarity. Historical animosity, I gave you a reference of 1969, and Russia's concerns about increasing Chinese influence in Central Asia. In Central Asia, the situation is such that economy, China, security, Russia. But slowly, we have seen that China wants a military outpost in Pakistan and in Afghanistan. Particularly, Bagram base is of specific interest to China, and from there it can start looking at the security in the Central Asian region, and Central Asia is Russia's backyard, and Russia would never agree to that. So that becomes another area of concern, and contingent upon external factors that already discussed. And for India, loss of a dependable partner, isolation at key platforms, question marks. So since more than 60% of our defense platforms are from Russian origin, spares, suppose there is a situation of conflict between India and China, we cannot rely on Russia, because Russia has got greater dependence on China than India-Russia relationship. Okay, so that is why spares and other defense supplies, there will be question mark over their continuous availability. And scope for adventurism, because one of our defense partners that has a greater dependence on China, so naturally China would think that they can force Russia to act in a specific manner, not to cooperate with India, and thus weakening India's defenses, and China can go for adventurism. That is another threat, and this might lead to friction between India-Russia relations as expected. So then the question comes, what should India do? Here try to diversify it between internal and external. Okay, internally we have to strengthen economy and military. Then it is about reducing dependence. You can give example of Atmanirbhar Bharat. Okay. Then to tackle China, strengthening border infra. And externally divide it into two, with Russia and other options. With Russia, what we should do? Diversify economic partnership, okay, let us write it, partnership or engagement. Here also go for diversify ECO economic partnership, then it would be diplomatic engagements. Because if you want to pull Russia away from China, naturally you will have to provide it with an alternative market, and that is what we are doing with energy trade. One, it is addressing our concerns with respect to cheaper energy supplies, plus we are providing to the Russia that we are also a reliable partner, we are also a bigger market for your energy cells. Okay. Other option would be diversify defense procurement. Then what should we do? Diversify relation with other like-minded nations. Other like-minded nations you can mention about USA, France, Japan, Germany. Okay. So these are some of the steps, and this is how you can, even if you do not diversify, but these are the ways you can think. I mean, diversify means write specific points, no need to write these many. You can write, you do not write, that is completely up to you. Writing is but better. But yes, I am talking about the way of thinking, because generally the issue is that, generally the concern is that how to create points, how to do points. You see, I did nothing, I just divided things, and naturally under each head at least you will have 1 or 2 points. 4 heads, 2 points each, you have got 8 points. That is more than sufficient. Okay. So that is all you need to do. Slowly we will develop this. Okay. So next, the question for practice. These are the 2 questions. I am not explaining it now, but yes, this is the group. Yeah, I think I write this too many times, but still you can write the answer, you can send the PDF to this group, and you can get it evaluated. Okay. So this is the practice, since you see mains are over now. These are 4 months, and after that you will get involved with the prelims. So for that, I thought that it would be better that some sort of, since this is mainly mains focused, let us work not only on the knowledge domain but also on the answer writing domain. And regarding answer writing, the yesterday's video, you can look at it and that you will find it beneficial, as I have tried to break answer writing into multiple areas, and I have tried to explain how different factors play into evaluation of your answers. Okay, so that's all for today. Do write your answers. I am keep that it. Thank you very much.